Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another discussion review. It's gonna be like a bit brief, but it's something I wanted to do just like a spur of the moment, mostly because earlier in the week I read like a interesting uh, article, an interview that was had with '90s rap star Vanilla Ice, who said that the 90s was the best decade ever before like the iPhone came into play. Hey Daniel, and I really wanted to make this discussion yesterday, but I wasn't feeling well, so I'm doing it now. Uh, you know, I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 1988, so I grew up in the 90s. So I was uh so I'm aware of that particular decade, and I do have very fond memories of that decade. And it's like I was talking with some friends, and it's like, you know, who have been around in the '90s, and you know, I got some various opinions, and it's like, by and large, you know, I mean, not saying that the '90s was perfect by any means. It was not perfect, but it definitely was like a sweet spot so far as, because like we didn't have, I mean, the internet was, you know, seeded, but it wasn't a colossal thing that permeated everybody's lives. I can still remember, I mean, if you know, was born in like the 70s or the 80s, uh I'm 4 years late to give an opinion. Yeah. But it was like interesting thought. It's like, you know, we all probably had this discussion, you know, by in various situations, but you know, it's the first time me like, you know, making a video discussing this because I mean, like I said, I have fond memories of the '90s, uh, and it's like we had computers, we had like dial up and stuff like that. Remember dial up, where it's like you couldn't use the phone at the same time while we was using the computer because the dial up, because it was like so slow to even download certain things, like almost like a day for certain cases, like a movie. You can't even download a movie right away. And then like you had like VHS tapes where it's like I remember my father, because like he was like a big Seinfeld fan, and like he had like a bunch of VHS. I remember him having like a bunch of VHS tapes of Seinfeld that he recorded on VHS when I was a kid. He had like stacks of them. And I remember watching a lot of Seinfeld. That's what like even I even remember how Seinfeld was back in the day because like I watched a lot of it. I watched a lot of TV with my father growing up. Him and my grandfather, a lot of my relatives. But the '90s, this because the '90s had its problems. You got like the Rodney King beatings. At the tail end of the '90s, you got the Columbine situation. They was dealing with Saddam Hussein at the time. I wasn't really up on like current events as a kid, but as I got older, when into the early 2000s, like I realized about like because when Saddam Hussein died and everything like that, it was like a big deal. Uh, uh, yeah, and you got like certain the first instances of domestic terrorism and stuff like that. So it's like, and then you got the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal with Bill Clinton, but and then the OJ trial situation and like the high speed car chase and situations like that. Like I said, it wasn't perfect, definitely not. But then you definitely had some good stuff because the '90s was like the renaissance when it comes to like music. Like you got like Eminem, Tupac, Biggie. You got like and B like Usher and like Boys to Men. You got boy bands like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. This is the birth, the foundation of what boy bands are. Like you wouldn't have like One Direction or like the BTS Korean pop stars today if it wasn't for like guys like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Yeah, I do respect the Columbine victims, and like that. I'm surprised we even still having to deal with like school shootings after that, because like the whole gun control thing was like I can't believe it's still like a thing now, where it should have been nipped in the bud right after that situation with Columbine. After the Columbine situation, they should have nipped in the bud then, but the government and their little well, not even the government, it's just those like NRA Second Amendment nut jobs. Not everybody, but there's quite a lot of those nut jobs that like consider guns more important than children's lives. But I don't want to harp on that too much. But yeah, great TV shows. I mean, animated movies was the renaissance. It had like a renaissance. There's a reason why they had like the Renaissance Disney movies, because in the 90s you got like great animation. You talking about like animation was was the reason the animation probably like in like Disney Soul or in the Inside Out wouldn't be what they are if it wasn't for like people, because they watched certain stuff as kids in the 90s and like decided to go in that field and take what we saw then and bring it to a higher level. Like like the Lion King, the original, and we talking about the original stuff, the good stuff. You got Lion King, Aladdin, Hercules, the Little Mermaid. You got like the Prince of Egypt movie, which I want to go back to and do a review for that at some point, because like these animations was like great. You get like the TV shows in the 90s was phenomenal, live action and animated. Yeah, Boy Meets World. You got Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Martin, Friends, Sister Sister. What else? Family Matters. Excuse me. Yeah, it's like the Iron Giant. Yes, the Iron Giant was like a big deal. I think one of the first few things that Vin Diesel was ever in. I mean, besides like commercials he did for Street Sharks. Street Sharks was a great TV show. It was kind of like, right on the coattails of the Ninja Turtles, but the Ninja Turtles. Nightmare Before Christmas, Tim Burton. Thank you for reminding me, Daniel, because I did not want to forget about Tim Burton. Tim Burton was the king in the 90s when it comes to like the movies. So far as like the Addams Family, Nightmare Before Christmas, Batman, 90s Batman, Tim Burton's Batman movies, and a little bit of Schumacher thrown in there, because still, Schumacher and Tim Burton made Batman, even though at the time we was kind of poo-pooing Batman and Robin, but we look back on it kind of fondly because of the goofiness. But in the crux of the 90s, Batman was dominant. But until after, like, I love 89 Batman and Batman Returns, despite like certain parents of the time, not my parents. My father really like, he was, he wasn't like a cool parent or anything like that. But he's just like, he let me and my brother watch certain things. He was there for the most part, but he didn't think we wouldn't be able to handle that kind of stuff. It was Batman. He didn't really mind. It wasn't like, because he watched it with me, of course. I'm pretty sure he made sure he watched it before he let us watch it. But it's like, by and large, he wasn't worried about any kind of sex scenes in a Batman movie. But I gotta be honest, I mentioned this many, many times before. When I was a little kid, when I first got interested in girls, it was because of Tim Burton's a lot of Tim Burton's female characters, but more specifically, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. That was the first time that I realized that, like, oh, I realized I like something now. Like, I got something I like now. It's like, oh, like that kind of like, it's kind of give me that stems the reason why I like strong women. Most of my friends joke like I like to be dominated by women, but it's like, I like my strong women and definitely those bad girl kind of characters. Uh, what else? You got '90s Batman TV show, '90s X-Men, '90s Spider-Man. Uh, uh, I mean, it's like the '90s was like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show birthed a lot of good. I mean, despite how you feel about like, uh, uh, what's his name? Uh, crap, I'm blanking on his name, but whatever. Uh, yeah, I do have fans. So, like, it's just, yeah, especially like, oh yeah, Black Cat. Yeah, I definitely had like a thing for Black Cat too, and it's probably the reason why cats are my favorite. It's probably like the like a subconscious reason why I like cats as my favorite animal. Uh, I don't know if it was like a fetish, but it's like if I see a girl dressed as Black Cat or Catwoman, eh, it definitely it definitely piqued my interest. I know why you like the character of Spider-Man. uh, but I mean, it's like if you see like certain like artists draw like cat. I think I got like a from the either last C2E2 or the year before that, where I because I used to get a lot of like posters from like comic book events, and I know I have like yeah no I definitely have like a because I took a lot of pictures of what I get from like those not game conferences, but like those comic book conferences. But the uh, I got I don't know about Catwoman, but I definitely have at least one or two posters of Black Cat, very sexualized. But oh my god, I need like I seen like people on Twitter who got like people doing commissions of them doing like you know uh sexual acts. Let's say sexual acts with a lot of their favorite animated characters, and I don't know. I might want one for like me doing like one with like a lot of my favorite like female uh characters like Black Cat and Catwoman. The Tim Burton version. Oh, uh, speaking of like gothic stuff, The Craft, the movie The Craft. Another reason why I love that movie is because of the crazy woman who turns out to be the villain in that film, friend turned villain. That woman, oh my god, she was the female lead in The Waterboy. Uh, and I love her. I forgot Melissa Bach, something Bach. I know her last name Bach because it's like a friend of mine keep repeating that. But uh, I love her. It's like something about like crazy chick or gothic chicks or badass women. It's like 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 I don't have like a crazy fixation on like those timid soft girls, if that makes any sense. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. It's probably like more ideal to be with girls like that, but just like something about girls like what I just listed is just they're my kryptonite, man. But speaking of Adam Sandler, in terms of movies, Adam Sandler, like Jim Carrey, like it was like definitely like kings of the '90s when it comes to the movies, man. Like with the Waterboy, was I don't think Mr. Deeds was in. I think that was like in like early 2000s, but like you got like The Wedding Singer, I think Happy Gilmore maybe, or maybe Billy Madison. I can't remember, but definitely Adam Sandler was, at his height of fame during the '90s. You got Robin Williams, plenty others. It's like a lot of TV shows. Like once again, In Living Color. In Living Color was great. Can you imagine kids these days watch it in living color with no freaking sense of humor and like just enjoy what you see and just feel okay just laughing because it's just ridiculous stuff. Like you was Fire Marshal Bill, Handyman. Like Jim Carrey is another person who was like taking over the '90s a lot with his movies because what he brought to In Living Color, people's taking a chance on him when it comes. Ace Ventura. The first, just a little information here. I found out uh, a couple of months back. Uh, his first movie, big movie, Ace Ventura, was a huge gamble. Nobody expected it to uh, do well at the box office at all. But because Jim Carrey's awesome acting and his comedic timing, that movie is still today is revered as one of his best movies, along with like The Mask. Uh, yeah. So I mean, like, I kid you not, if you go to like a karaoke bar or something like that, and you play like a boy band song, like is a reason why like every May, once the beginning of May starts, people will have like on Twitter or doing like a video like of the NSYNC song "It's Gonna Be Me," and instead it's gonna be May. You know why? Because that is still resonant. I don't even think like BTS or One Direction will have like that kind of mainstay years down the line. I mean, Old Town's another one. I think there's only one Old Town song I know of, and they did a song for the Inspector Gadget movie at the time, starring Matthew Broderick. Uh, uh, I forgot what it's called. Because I know how the song goes. Like, you can find me if you want me. If you need a friend, you got me. I'll be your Superman. I do what no one can. You find me, I am everything that you need. Deep down inside of you, no matter what you do. That song. But I remember jamming out to that song a lot back in the day. That was like you don't make boy bands like that anymore, kind of situation. But like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys are like at the tippy top is like the best boy bands ever. And then of course you got like grunge music. I was like a grunge music kind of guy, but I respect the grunge music of the era, and like certain rock music. Like I have like certain respect for that. Uh, 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 because you got Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain was like one of like the biggest stars of the '90s rock era. And then he was the one that started the whole, because like if you see any like movies, like one of the lead characters in like The Faculty, another great '90s movie, what's his name? I keep confusing him with Ethan Hawke, but if you've seen The Faculty, you know what I'm talking about. The guy who was selling drugs to a lot of people, the tall, lanky guy. He was in like he had like a short little cameo in like the what was that black and white movie? Crap. What was that movie? Sin City. He was in an elevator with Brittany Murphy. He was like supposed to be playing some kind of killer. He only had like a cameo, but he was in The Faculty, and he was wearing like a short sleeve shirt over a long sleeve shirt. And because of Kurt Cobain, he started that particular look. But then, of course, you get certain things that, like like toys, like Tamagotchis. You got like the internet was starting. At the time, of course, you got like certain computers and stuff like that. The old school, heavy, fat computers at the time. What else? Yeah, Furbies. Remember Furbies? That was a thing. Because cute, cuddly, strange animals was like a big thing, and Tamagotchis was like the precursor to what we got in like the TV shows Digimon. Because Digimon was like a big thing too. We got Pokemon, Digimon. Those were like a thing. I think, what year Yu-Gi-Oh came out? Because I think it was like a year after, Pokemon, a year or two after Pokemon. Could be wrong because I want to count Yu-Gi-Oh. in that 90s category, but I want to be sure I'm right about that. Yeah, yeah, 1998 Yu-Gi-Oh. No. Uh, is the Japanese anime. I think year zero, but like the English uh came out in the year 2000. So technically, the tail end. I mean, I'll count it technically if you guys want to count Yu-Gi-Oh as a 90s TV show, because like certain things in the year 2000 specifically just borderlines 90s, and it's like there's a fair amount of people who want to count certain 2000 stuff as part of the 90s. Technically, it wasn't until like uh, the year 2001 when people want to make that final cutoff point. But that's another thing I want to check as far as like. Yeah, the first scary movie was July 2000, which still kind of like brings a lot of parodies and references of 90s film and TV shows. Like The Matrix was the first Matrix movie, 1999. That was a great film, despite like their crappy later sequels. But the first one was great, and the first Blade movie, because like the 90s was all about like edgy stuff, extreme, like in the comic books at the time of the 90s, there's a lot of extreme stuff, like like big muscle dudes sometimes, and like supermodel kind of bodies, and like like busty kind of women in the comics, and a lot of like pouches, and like because like Venom was like a huge in the 90s. This is where he was created. He was like, him and Deadpool, like, and Cable, like, was like a big deal of the 90s, and like Lobo, and it's like those kind of characters was, edgy characters was like a big deal in the 90s, because this was what it was all about. And really made like comics kind of revitalized, especially for Marvel, because there wasn't like doing that well. It was doing fine, but it's not as well as they're doing now. DC to some extent as well, but it wasn't as doing as well then as they are now. But that was just like a brief moment in history, looking back on it now. But yeah, comics was like had a had their day in the sun in the 90s. It's kind of like we grew up on Batman, the anime series. Iron Man in the anime series was great too, because it got like a great intro music that I Am Iron Man. And if you look it up, like the 90s Iron Man opening theme song is like you get to see like Tony Stark with a mullet, Hammer and Ray with his tools making new suits. Every time he hits that metal, it's like, I am Iron Man. I am Iron Man. And it's like, it makes you, because like the reason I even had an appreciation, even before the first Iron Man movie, I knew who Iron Man was. I was like into the comics at the time, mostly thanks because my father and my uncle, who like because they was telling me about like the 90s Spider-Man movie, and then the first Superman movie, everything like that got me hooked on comics in the first place. But at the time, it was kind of taboo in certain eras, because even the popular kids who liked this stuff didn't want, because it wasn't cool to be into the nerdy stuff like it is now, because everybody's like into this now. But back in the day, because we have like the whole anti-bullying thing now, but back in the day, it wasn't like that much of a concern, even though it should have been a concern. Man, I gotta do a lot of homework, but yeah, you take care of Daniel. It wasn't gonna be that long of a video. I just want to like talk about this because it was like very interesting, because it's like nice nostalgic. I think like '90s was like a bedrock for nostalgic stuff. what's another thing? Yeah, like bullying was like I mean, I had my fair share of bullies in the '90s, but compared to like the '80s and the '70s during like school when people was being bullied, then it was apparently a whole lot worse. I think it's like according to one of my friends who was a like because she's a little older, not a little older. She's like in her early 50s. She remember like the '80s and as far as like high school was, and like bullying was like everything you see in like '80s movies when it comes to like high school, like the Breakfast Club or whatever like that, and like Back to the Future. Bullying then, no joke, was on that level, and you know, I might not liked had been I would uh love to just avoid being. It was hard to avoid being bullied back then. It was just that I wasn't popular. I wasn't one of the popular kids, so it's like I definitely didn't enjoy being bullied. Luckily, I had like a knack at befriending one of the popular kids in wherever school I was at. So that took some of the weight off of. So I wasn't bullied as bad because I had like one of the popular kids, or at least a few of the popular kids, having my back because they know I was a cool dude. I wasn't like that stereotypical nerdy dude. I was like still cool enough to just be around with it, kind of thing. But I seen kids getting stuffed in lockers. Luckily, I was heavier at that time, so I was too big to be pushed into a locker. But I seen that happen before, at least a couple of times. It wasn't like constant, but every so often on rare blue moons, you do like I have seen that. But yeah, yeah, it's just certain. Uh, uh, I remember the wardrobe at the time. I mentioned about the short sleeve shirts over the long sleeve shirts. We didn't sagging pants was like the thing back then. It started in the '90s technically with the sagging pants. Why go British for a second? Pants, like the sagging pants. Uh, 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 because like gangster rap was a big deal of the '90s. Snoop Dogg and LL Cool J and everything like that. Uh, J Lo was a rising star in the '90s, but it's like sagging pants. Everybody was doing their thing. It's just like with Nelly when he had like that band-aid over his face. Whoever was popular at the time, we wanted to copy. Is like always a thing. With every new popular person, they always want to be like them in outer appearance or inner appearance. It's like you think like it was crazy. Well, I think it is kind of crazier nowadays with like Kim Kardashian or at least any one of those Kardashian people with like the injections and butt lifts and all the other crap, and girls want to just imitate that crap just to look like the Kardashians or whatever like that. And like looking back, sagging pants, band-aid over your face looks tame by comparison. But the thing is, Vanilla Ice, who was a fair bit popular in the '90s, mostly because of the Go Ninja Go Ninja Go song with Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze movies, because the first two Ninja Turtles movies, I love them to death to this day, even though they were PG-13, so they couldn't utilize their weapons being ninjas all that much, but it was still fun to watch and I still had a good time. If you ever seen like The Secret of Ooze, certain characters like Tokar and Razor. They're babies. They're babies. Ah, you know that reference. And then you feed them donuts with like antidote in them and stuff like that. And they get kicked into a club where you happen to upon Vanilla Ice doing the Go Ninja Go song, because like there's only two Vanilla Ice songs a lot of people remember. It's the Ninja Turtle song and Ice Ice Baby. Those, at least to me, that's the only two songs I remember from Vanilla Ice. But I do know he was prominent there. But like he said, like with the iPhone and like the advancement of like the internet with like social media and everything like that. It's just that I kind of feel that he's right in some way because with like social media kind of like was like a fair more of a detriment than an asset as far as maybe like 60 to 70% more of a detriment than an asset by comparison. Because back in the 90s, I feel like despite the issues we was experiencing at the time, it felt more simpler of a time. Where like we may have the internet, it was the early version of the internet, but we might have been on it, but we didn't have things like even not even Facebook. We didn't even have MySpace yet at the time, so we didn't have to worry about online bullying. We just have normal bullying where you can just go to school. If you're dealing with like a bully, at least it stopped at the door as we leave the school and go home. So that way, unless you had trouble with, typical like, abusive parents or something or a guardian, when you got home, that's where the bullying stops. And you have some kind of bit of a reprieve until the next school day. Now it's kind of like you can't escape online bullying because bullying is everywhere. Even despite the whole anti-bullying thing, we can't escape bullying in some fashion. It's still worse now than even ironically than it was back then. But like I said, me personally, I still have my fair bit of fond memories of the 90s. Kid and Play. Like you talking about like outfits. I remember Kid and Play, the first, house party movie. The outfits of the time may have been very colorful. But those was a wardrobe at the time. I remember like dressing like a lot of people do 90s themed parties, which I want to do one day, or at least go to one day, so I can dress like, Hakeem Harrison from A Different World, because that was a look back in the day. And then of course I know he's, I'm have no love for Cosby, given the fact what he's done, quote unquote, allegedly. But the Cosby Show and The Simpsons were a big deal in the 90s too. As far as like TV show, they were like, A Different World and the Cosby Show was so important. Even like Martin and Fresh Prince of Bel Air and Family Matters and Sister and Girlfriend. When it comes to black, entertainment TV shows, those shows were so important to the black community as far as being seen in like a better light than we've seen years prior. As far as like, being like, normal middle class Americans that have, even certain white people look on these shows fondly too, because they get to see like, even though they know, or at least, a fair bit of them knew like black people like probably don't live in squalor or anything like that, or junkies or whatever. You get to see like, Eddie Murphy was another. That just came to mind. Eddie Murphy was another icon of the 90s. But, well, 80s too. He was like a big deal in the 80s, but it's like we remember him fondly in the 90s too. But you get to see like black people in like a respectable light. You got like a doctor and a lawyer raising 5 children in like a very nice household. You got a Fresh Prince of Bel Air, a kid from Philly moved to California to live with his uncle and aunt, and like who's a judge, and I forgot what the wife did, but they were a respectable pillar of the community. Even though they all every one of these shows dealt with serious topics of like race and like bullying and all kinds of stuff like that was very serious of the time, even still now, gang violence and like gun violence and stuff like that. Even though they had like their mostly comedic shows, they had their fair share of serious topics that still permeated and still resonate to this day. How many of you still remember because a lot of people still cry at the scene where like Will Smith's father, who earlier in the episode was like back in his life, and like Will was excited, and it's like you guys like father back, he's like it's just him and his mom for the longest time, and then like Uncle Phil, who was filling in for the father role, because Uncle Phil is probably like it's like one of the most iconic dads next to Carl Winslow, uh, and he like like Will's actual father was like turned out to be like a shitty father who just abandoned them not once but twice. And the fact that you get to see like one of the most powerful scenes to this day, because like apparently, because according to Will Smith, like behind the scenes, you ever seen like that documentary of the Prince of Bel Air last year, where he mentions that James Avery, who played Uncle Phil, who also voiced Shredder in a Ninja Turtles cartoon, he didn't think Will, I wouldn't say he wasn't good of an actor, but he could have been better. But it was like rehearsing that scene, and like after that powerful scene, he mentions that James whispered in his ear while they was hugging, and he mentions like, "Now that's acting, son." But there's plenty of people who still cry at that scene. I didn't cry at the scene, but I did thought that was a powerful scene, and when the fact that like, why doesn't he want me, man? That did get me, but not as much as like I remember a particular scene from the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I can't to this day watch at all because they always gets me, and like it makes me cry every time. Is the fact that I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all remember this, that the episode where like Will in school was hiding drugs for a friend, and like he had it in his locker, and then there was some kind of school dance was going on, and Carlton wasn't feeling well, and Will told him like, "Oh, there's some medicine in my locker. Just go get some and come back to the party." And forgetting that he also had like the drugs in his backpack as well, so Carlton accidentally took those, and like got high, passed out, and had to go to the hospital. And then at the end of the episode, he confesses, even though Carlton's covering up for him, knowing that it was just an accident and just grabbed them by mistake. He didn't want Will to get in trouble, but Will was like so guilt ridden, he just had to like confess to get that off his chest, and then like he's sitting there tearing up and like like, "I'm sorry, Carlton, I'm sorry." And then like he's like, despite him teasing Carlton, it's still his cousin, and the fact that he almost killed him accidentally. But and then like you see like Uncle Phil giving him this hard hug, and it's like the episode ends from there. That made me cry. To this day I cannot watch that episode. I cannot go to that episode ever. That's too much for me. But anyway, I just want to bring that up because I think like the 90s was like, I mean, a lot of people, despite like, I mean, like as years went on, we got better, because during the 90s there was that whole don't ask, don't tell stuff in the military. Even though we got rid of that because that was just a stepping stone, even though that wasn't a good thing for the homosexual community, the LGBT community. It was, looking back on it, it was just a start. But at the time, it wasn't good enough. But Bill Clinton had, it was like a progressive start of the time. Because in a way, it was better than not allowing, people of all walks of life being allowed to serve their country. And this was like a stepping stone, hopefully leading to what we have now, where it's just like people can proudly serve despite their orientation. But yeah, this is like, it, like I said, the 90s was not perfect, but it was definitely like a sweet spot compared to like what happened in the 80s and the 70s and on further back. Because in the 90s, despite like, you know, we still, a fair bit of racism going on, but as far as like, people uh being able to like, being allowed to mix with white people and black people, and it was no segregation. It was still like, you see, like in a different world, you got like a primarily black college, but there's like a fair bit of white people, Asian people, and all that stuff, being able to like be able to sit in the same room with each other and joke and have fun and stuff like that without being looked as disgusting kind of situation. Uh, it was definitely like, like a lead into what we have now as far as like camaraderie among the different races and stuff like that. It's not like, oh, the whole colorblind thing. It's like, we don't want you to be colorblind. We just want you to be able to acknowledge your privilege and be able to use that for the betterment of people who doesn't look like you, because until like the next few years, up to maybe the next generation, where it's like, some white people won't be the majority anymore. They're on like the 51% at this point. Pretty soon they won't be the majority anymore. But they'd be able to like be in a room with each other and treat each other as equals, while acknowledging, yeah, this is like a person who has different experiences than me, who happens to be black or Korean or Latino or Native American, whatever. But the 90s, like I said, was the foundation of what we have now. Even though there was some fun stuff in the 80s, I think, I don't know. Some people look at the 80s pretty fondly as well. And we still got some fair bit of good stuff from the 80s as well. But I think the 90s was the turning point for what we have now. Today's stands, we still have issues. We still dealing with like cops, overzealous cops beating on and shooting unarmed minorities. Even as here and there, white people, unarmed white people too. We still dealing with that, and still dealing with some fair bit of bullying here and there. But it's just, we have more knowledge now and know that kind of stuff will not be tolerated as it was as in the past. So we know more now, but the turning point was the 90s, in my opinion. But yeah, I think in a way, Vanilla Ice was right. The 90s was pretty cool, man. It's like, I really want them to bring back like certain clothes from the 90s, like overalls. Farmers shouldn't be the only ones to be able to wear overalls. And I think we should bring back overalls. Overalls is fun to wear. It was like a fun outfit to wear. And it's like, I don't know. But right now at this point, it's either like farmers, or I don't even know if farmers even still even use them anymore. But it shouldn't be just like a 90s look costume. You know what I mean? But like I said, I still want to do like a 90s theme party at some point in the future. Or at least go to one. Just so I can dress up in like good attire back in the day. Because they were comfortable. Except for Long Johns. Long Johns sucked. I know, like, when, especially living in Chicago, when the snow was falling and like your mother's trying to make sure you wear warmer clothes, I would not wear my Long Johns. No, they were so uncomfortable. I don't care if it was keeping me warm. They were itchy. There was like hugging you and like, uncomfortable places. They were not comfortable, in a wear. I don't even think they even provide Long Johns anymore. Is Long Johns even still a thing anymore? They were not comfortable clothing. I don't care if I would have gotten in trouble. I left those things on the bed, despite my stepmother being angry, the fact that like I did not put on those Long Johns like she told me to. I avoided it as much as I possibly could. They sucked. And I think a lot of people agree with me. They were sucky clothing. I would not. That's why you have like layers. like other layers of clothing that you could wear to keep you warm that didn't feel like you was being itched all over in every inch of your cells of your body. But anyway, that's my take on the subject. I looked upon the 90s as fondly as probably Vanilla Ice does. But like I said, it wasn't perfect, but it was a turning point. But leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think about the 90s. If you grew up in the 90s, what part of the 90s did you look back on that was fondly to you? Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl. Follow me on my Patreon. It's patreon.com/talkativecarl. If you have any ideas for any other discussion topics, do you want me to tackle? Let me know, and I'll make it a priority and give you a shout out.